In the early 1900s, New York City's ports were busier than ever, as scores of cargo and passenger ships from all over the world made their way to the thriving metropolis. Some say the ports in New York City at the time were busier than its streets, as a vast majority of business in the region was taking place on the waterfront. The heavy activity at the port created a demand for various types of work for would-be entrepreneurs. Initially, the Weeks family owned the Clawson Point Ferry, which ran from Clawson Point in the Bronx to College Point in Queens, prior to the construction of the White Stone Bridge. When Richard B. Weeks left the U.S. Army as a second lieutenant and returned home, he joined forces with his father, Francis H. Weeks, an austere Englishman who made his life on the water to launch a new endeavor. In 1919, Francis H. saw a money-making opportunity in the business of handling bunker coal and dry ballast. The father and son team put together 2 floating cranes in the port of New York, and with that, the Weeks Stevedoring Company was born.
When I started, everything was verbal. It was all over the telephone. And people would ask you for a price on unloading a ship at so much a ton. You'd give them a quote, you'd do the work, and actually a lot of times you'd never even see the people.
In 1940, Francis H. Weeks passed away, leaving the 21-year-old company in the hands of his son. As Weeks continued on its path toward greater successes in the coming years, Richard B. brought his own sons, Ted and Dick, into the company fold. In 1957, he began to distance himself from the business after suffering a number of mild strokes. Ted and Dick Weeks proved to be a dynamic pair and took the divide-and-conquer approach to business. They worked together to create bold strategies, while separately specializing in their areas of expertise to grow the company. In the effort to continue expanding over the next 2 decades, Weeks took on increasingly complex projects, which meant increasing staff. It was a risky move, but the Weeks brothers took the challenge in stride. The company soon added wreck removal, dredging, and construction to its list of capabilities, and solidified its reputation for going the extra mile for its customers.
We have relationships with a lot of people around the country. If I call one of those people up and I explain the opportunity to them, odds are they'll come. They trust us, they know us, and they know I wouldn't call them unless it was a good opportunity.
During the 1970s and 1980s, the company, which was renamed Weeks Marine in 1988, expanded exponentially through a combination of organic growth and acquisitions. The firm purchased its first large tug, first hydraulic dredge, and 500 pieces of floating equipment to expand its fleet, marking the beginning of an opportunistic acquisition program. Weeks also began evaluating and buying like-minded companies. In 1977, Richard N. Weeks' son, Richard S. Weeks, joined the company right out of business school, working with his father and uncle full-time after having worked at the firm as a part-time employee in his youth. In 1985, Richard S. spearheaded the company's entry into a construction division and hired key staff to operate it. He saw openings in the industry, but did not dive in full bore. Instead, he used a stepwise approach so he could ensure success in this new endeavor.
Everyone here at Weeks Marine has made a commitment to make the very most of our capabilities everywhere possible. We recognize that we are a unique organization with unique opportunities and are committed to this objective.
By the 1990s, Weeks Marine had a burgeoning business, but it would grow yet again with the acquisition of American Dredging in 1993 and T.L. James in 1998. With growth came new opportunities, including an uptick in major international work.
We have always been a very multicultural organization. for a variety of reasons. It's my family's heritage. We're also a collection of different companies, and as we bring each company in, they have an influence over our culture, and we change a bit, typically. So really, what are we? And that's the challenge, had to get everybody working together and in a unified way.
Since its founding in 1919, Weeks Marine has accomplished much of its work behind the scenes and without much publicity. Throughout the years, however, several projects have put the company in the spotlight as they involve the transporting of priceless artifacts or materials that are of national interest. The tragic events of September 11th forever changed the landscape of New York City and had a deep impact on every American. Weeks Marine was at ground zero within 24 hours after the first plane struck the World Trade Center. The water that isolated the World Trade Center would provide the means to support a massive cleanup effort, as Weeks worked with the Corps of Engineers in New York City to identify and develop water-based loadout facilities, and to assemble and operate a fleet of floating cranes, barges, and tugs to move all materials. The 9/11 tragedy would not be the only emergency Weeks Marine responded to. The company also participated in the cleanup efforts of both Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and Superstorm Sandy in New Jersey. Weeks worked on projects that would protect vulnerable areas like these from future natural disasters by restoring the coastline and constructing flood walls.
I definitely think that, everyone working here, they see every challenge as an opportunity, and it's impressive by how fast people mobilize and how quickly people come together and bring the resources to, solve problems, whether it's, responding to disaster or, just on a typical construction or dredging job. I think it's the nature of the work. It's not static. You're always going to have things coming up, so people are kind of used to that on your feet thinking and tackling those big challenges.
One of Weeks Marine's more recent visible projects was in its removal of the U.S. Airways Flight 1549 aircraft from the Hudson River. Dubbed the Miracle on the Hudson, pilot Chesley Sully Sullenberger safely landed the aircraft on the river. Weeks' job to remove the aircraft from the water began at Battery Park City, where the fuselage drifted and settled. The firm surveyed the aircraft and brought a floating crane to the area, where divers attached slings around the tail and wings. The crane lifted the fuselage, allowing the water to drain, and positioned the aircraft onto a barge for transport to Weeks Greenville Yard. The event demonstrated that Weeks Marine staff and equipment were capable of handling successful high-profile projects on short notice.
You look into some of these other projects, that I think are noteworthy, building bridges and terminals and stuff like that. Those are more permanent monuments and structures. Of course, to the layman, we took an airplane out of the Hudson River, we picked a roller coaster up out of the ocean, we, put the Enterprise on top of the Intrepid. That's what you get in Time magazine for, but it's a very, very small sliver of what we do,
By the late 2000s, Weeks Marine was ready to begin writing its next chapter as a company. By then, Weeks had built a war chest that included numerous assets and equipment, a large number of skilled and dedicated employees, and strategic positions it had earned in the markets it served. Because of Weeks Marine's size and standing in the industry, the company's leadership team knew it had to create a fresh focus on its greatest asset, its people. In 2015, Weeks Marine launched its Leadership Development Program, LDP, to put employee development front and center. The LDP program brings together leaders from different regions, Weeks divisions, and disciplines, estimators, project managers, equipment specialists, finance management, and others to develop relationships and share an expanded knowledge base and insights into how Weeks works. For Weeks Marine, safety is a mindset and a value. In 2008, the company launched its innovative IIF program, which stands for an Incident and Injury-Free Workplace. As part of the program, Weeks created a multi-pronged initiative that cultivated an environment in which every staff member committed to an overall focus on safety awareness.
The IAF program, which really, I think the key is when you give the acronym, it really doesn't convey the intent as much, because the goal is to have an incident and injury-free workplace, right? So we try to say it more than we use that acronym, because it has an intended meaning. But I think it's very important to the company. And it is a condition of our business that clients are demanding about safety. They expect us to perform the project, which to them means performing the project safely, performing the project with quality, and performing the project timely. And the important thing for Weeks Marine is not only do we want to perform on all projects that way because it's good for our people and the quality of their life, it's good for the company and the quality of work we get, and it's good for the clients also because we deliver professionalism in all of these areas.
As Weeks Marine shored its core, in terms of improving the skills of its staff, the company also solidified its position by repowering much of its fleet. Rather than only building equipment from the ground up or adding new vessels to the fleet, Weeks also made many of its existing dredges, tugboats, and other equipment as modern and competitive as possible.
Hundreds of pieces of ancillary equipment, from barges to boats to cranes to dozers. It's an incredibly equipment-intensive and labor-intensive business. Walking down that dock, I was marveling at the amount of equipment that this company has amassed. And again, they put all the money back into the company, and that's a big part of why it's such a good place to work.
Most companies never see their 100th anniversary, and it's even more remarkable for Weeks Marine to mark such a milestone while still being completely family-owned. CEO Richard S. Weeks attributes the company's longevity to a variety of factors, including its employees, suppliers, its community, and customers. The fact that the firm has remained private is seen by its staff as overwhelmingly positive. As owners, the Weeks family consistently takes a long view and supports sound, stable strategic investments. Risks are understood and managed by company leaders and family members who understand their special stewardship responsibility. That recipe has certainly served Weeks well through its growth and expansion into new sectors, and its executives expect it to be a key factor in the future of the company. As Weeks Marine continues to win larger and more significant projects and grow its name in the industry, Weeks family members can take stock of what they've been able to achieve with the help of its employees, partners, and clients. The company is looking for fresh opportunities every day, not just to secure larger jobs, but also to evaluate acquisitions, new equipment, and other features that will allow Weeks Marine to continue to flourish as it looks to the next 100 years.
We have all made a commitment here at Weeks Marine to ourselves, our fellow employees, our clients, our community, and our environment to make the most of our resources and capabilities and to make the greatest contribution to the future of the United States. I am confident that we are well prepared to achieve this.